I would like to share a story with you to put this into perspective about my life before salvation, before I got saved. Mentally, I was a wreck. I was carrying years worth of hurt without even realizing it due to the things I experienced in life. I used to suffer with severe depression because it had a delayed reaction. Things all seemed to hit me at once like a tidal wave. It left me depressed and suicidal because I deeply believed that the things I had experienced determined my worth. In my eyes, that's all I was ever going to be, hopeless and unlovable. These feelings would sit on my chest, and everything that happened throughout the day would upset me, and it caused my chest to get heavier. And then the nights, things would simply intensify. The spirit of depression would haunt and taunt me night after night. It's as if these feelings were a thermostat, and the demon would slowly amp up the heat. For around 6 years, I used to spend my nights pacing the floors for hours on end, listening to this demon try to convince me of every reason it could think of as to why I should give in and commit suicide. Its whispers were so loud that they could burst your eardrums. But every night, I made a choice to simply look the devil in the face and say one word. But at the time, it was the one short word my life depended upon. And that word was no. I had two choices: give in or refuse, and then take the beating that came with it. I decided to take the beating and ride it out without knowing when it would stop or if it would ever stop. I was determined to stay alive for the rest of my life, even if the rest of my life was spent in this endless tug of war for my soul. What made me make that decision was the fact that I could differentiate between myself and the spirit. I didn't even know about spiritual warfare, but I thought about it with human logic and came to the conclusion that these thoughts, feelings, and even temptations, if you will, were not a part of me, because things only got really bad at night. But if this is who I was, then I would have felt the same way all the time. But I didn't. That's what made me realize that this thing is a demon trying to get me to come into agreement with its lies. So I decided to stay alive and make the conscious decision night after night to take the unbearable pain and suffering, not knowing when it would end, but knowing that as long as I stayed alive, then the demon would lose. I turned the tables and discovered that me staying alive tormented the demon more than it can ever torment me. Over time, things got a lot harder, but eventually the trajectory of my life bent to God's will. He got a hold of me, and through Jesus did I overcome. But here's the thing. The pain and suffering throughout those moments left its mark on me. It's changed me. My eyes have been opened, and I can't see things the way they were before my eyes were closed. Those moments in my life have shaped my perspective on reality. I'll never be the same. That is exactly what it means to wrestle with God. To simplify, to wrestle with God means to take on the call to greatness, letting that adventure throw all it has at you, but choosing to take the beating for the greater good. It's allowing God to break you down and build you back up again. Right at the start of this study, I said that each of these stories about Genesis were different reflections of the same story because the Bible's message is consistent. The meaning of Jacob wrestling God is the same meaning behind Abraham leaving his tent. Moses stepping onto holy ground, God leading his people out of Egypt and into the promised land, Saul the Jew hunter being confronted by Jesus himself, and most importantly, Jesus choosing to take the weight of humanity's sin, letting it kill him, and rising from the dead. It's giving up your pointless and sinful life for one with direction and meaning, despite the pain and suffering that comes with. I compare that season of my life to Jacob wrestling Jesus. Jacob was willing to take the beating and see it out no matter how much it hurts. That's the meaning behind Jesus putting his thigh out of joint. It was to symbolize the pain that comes with trading that sinful and meaningless life of yours for something greater. Because think about the thigh. It takes up a portion of your center. And as we've talked about it in the past, the thigh is a symbol of creation, and Jesus separated that with a touch. At this point, we all know that to be holy means to be separate. He was separating Jacob from who he was to who he was meant to become, because that's what the touch of God does to a person. We know that Jacob limped for the rest of his life. After that moment, which is why I mentioned in that testimony, I can't see things the way I used to, because that fight changes you. That limp was the price to pay for choosing the path to perfection, a sacrifice in the pursuit of God. And because of that choice, he became Israel. He became the head of the tribe of God's chosen and set apart people, because that is what it means to wrestle with God. We're even given the reason for the name change by the angel himself, and the reason being was this: for as a prince hast thou power with God and with man, and hast prevailed. It means to struggle with God, which is exactly what the Israelites have been doing since their inception. Some may say God was harsh for letting them endure the things they endured, whereas some would say it was justified because they deserved it. He held them to a high standard because he knew as the Holy Creator that someone had to do it, even if it meant punishment, because his people are burnt but never consumed, tested but never taken out. That night Jacob wrestled and struggled with bold determination and stubborn faith. He looked Jesus dead in the face and told him no, because he knew there was beauty in the suffering. That's why Jacob held on, because he knew that there was something infinitely worse than spending the rest of his life with a limp. And that was letting go.